Welcome, my friends. In one of my recent videos, I talked about making your cuts more efficient and faster using this homemade cutting bed when you're doing 3mm plywood projects. In that video, I showed you how to make that cutting bed, and I also mentioned using that cutting bed as a jig should you need to mass produce items and do a bunch all at once. Today's video, I'm going to show you how I use that cutting bed and the jig that I use so you can do the same process and get stuff out the door quicker. Follow along, it's pretty cool. If you haven't seen that last video that I did, you should probably go back and watch that. It shows you how to make this cutting bed. It's not real expensive to make and it works out real well. Irregardless of when you make this cutting bed, what I would recommend is if you have your baseboard, you probably should make your baseboard out of metal or put a metal insert underneath it. I have a cheap piece of aluminum underneath. And the purpose for that is if you're burning through, you're going to be burning into your baseboard. If you're not paying attention, you could potentially start a fire, and you should really probably try to avoid that. Other than your cutting bed, the only thing you're going to need to make this jig is some poster board. I get the poster board right from the dollar store or a craft store. Whatever you can do to get it cheap, probably the best. I really recommend getting the black colored poster board. If you get any other color like a white, a pink, or anything of that nature, it's going to reflect the laser and it's not going to cut as well for you. The black cuts real well. Get the black and you'll be much happier. The only thing you're going to do at this point is you're going to cut your poster board down to the size of your jig, full size, and I'll show you that process. It's pretty quick and easy. From there, what you really want to focus on is getting it lined up. Find your hole. Once it's lined up, and push it right through the paper. Now it's all lined up. So when you lay this on your baseboard, you'll insert your dowel pins into the holes you have drilled into your baseboard. Your cutting bed and your jig will be all lined up and you won't need to move it. We're going to move on over to the computer now and I'll show you how to set up the jig and do your cuts. Now that we have the cutting bed and the paper that you're going to use as the jig all set up, you're just going to line it into your baseboard and push the pins into the holes you already have pre-drilled, and now you're all set. Okay, so to set up your jig, basically what you're going to do is you're going to figure out the size of the material you're going to be cutting. In this case, I'm doing what should be a 6x6 piece of 3mm ply. I would highly, highly recommend always measuring your plywood or whatever material you're using, because you're going to find 6 inches isn't always 6 inches in the wood world and many other things. So in this case, what I'm using here with the calipers, this is showing roughly 150 millimeters. So I'm going to actually use the millimeters. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to get a box shape with Lightburn is what I'm using. You could probably use other programs, but Lightburn by far is the better product to use as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to set the size of that to be 150 by 150. And of course, I didn't have the padlock check, so I will have to automatically set it. So 150 by 150. That's going to be the size of the material that I'm looking to cut or use as my, my blank. So now that I have that set, go to the array tool, and I'm going to set up 2 columns, 2 rows, so I'll actually have 4 spots. So when I actually send this over to the laser to cut, it's going to cut into the poster board, and then that's what I'll lay my blanks on. When I set up my projects to actually, what I'm going to cut or etch, I'm going to drop those into each of the boxes. So if I wanted 4 of them, I'd put those in 4 spots and then hit the button, and it's going to do all 4 at once without having to, reset each time. I'm actually setting this to cut the poster board. I'm setting it at 400. Max power of the power percentage is going to be 95%, and I'm going to do 2 passes. But prior to doing that, I'm going to turn on my vent system. Okay, Google, vacuum on, and my air assist, so that way it'll cut more quick and more efficient. Okay, send it. And actually, while that's cutting, we'll switch back over to the computer, and we're going to set up a project. So what I would recommend is save these as templates. So I'm going to save this as a 6x6 4 space template. And that way you can get back to it easier. And let's see what I have for a project that I want to do, that I can do multiple. I don't really have to do anything at this point. This is more just a show and tell. All right, so there's my design, and I'm going to shrink it down to what I want. Center it up. In this case, I'm doing Jesus on the cross. If you can't see over to the right-hand side, right here, I have it set up to cut certain areas and then etch certain areas. So we'll get to see that here in a second. I've had a couple projects where I've had to do a couple hundred items, awards for bicycle races. And if I had to do this one at a time, it would have taken me forever. So this jig, where I set up like this, really helps considerably. It's well worth it if you need to mass produce items. As I said, those are done. Save those extra pieces of paper. They're always good for other stuff. It's just a matter of putting your blanks in your template. Here's a case in point. I've got plywood from 2 different manufacturers. See the difference? This is the one that I measured. This is a different one. They're both supposed to be 6 by 6. So just make sure you're measuring and make sure you're using stuff from the same folks. And if you get ones that are popping up a little bit, the nice thing you can do with that base that we made is throw a magnet on it. It'll lay them out nice and flat. And making sure we're all set. I always like to frame stuff out ahead of time, just to make sure it's still lined up and it's looking good. Okay, everything's lined up. I've reframed and made sure everything's looking good. Now it's just a matter of hitting the start button and let it do its work. That's going to take some time. It speeds it up for the fact that you've got multiple at once, that you don't have to keep switching back and forth. But diode lasers are slow. If you're looking to get into fast, you're going to need a CO2 laser or a fiber laser. Just real quick, I see a lot of people wanting to get into laser work and laser etching and thinking they're going to make a lot of money and do it real fast and real quick right out of the box. There's a learning curve to using lasers. There's not a make cool stuff real fast button that I'm aware of out there, so just be aware if you're getting into this, it's going to take you some time and you can make some really cool stuff after a while. Up with all 4 of them, and now we'll pull them off. Now if I was going to do more, I just clean up and throw the next set of blanks down. All right, my friends, as you can see, that's how I use my homemade cutting bed and a bit of poster board to make a jig to mass produce items. When I have to get a bunch out the door all at once, it's going to make life a lot easier. If you didn't see it, make sure you catch that video. I'm going to link it up above again on how to make that cutting bed. Your cuts will be more efficient and you'll do it quicker. If you make something similar to that, you won't be disappointed. Other than that, I want you to know one thing. Your couch sucks. It's time for you to get up, get out in your garage and do something epic, like do some laser cutting. See you. And here's a sneak peek of some of the other stuff I work on.